Sebastian Vettel, you are the world champion!
Max Verstappen, you are world champion. We are world champions. Thank you so much.
El director de equipo más exitoso de los últimos 20 años se va. Lo rajan.
Lo fueron.
Lo fueron.
Moving forward from after this gathering, I will still remain employed by the company, but operationally, the baton will be handed over.
The news spread like wildfire. After 20 years leading the team, the longest-serving team principal in Formula One, and the youngest ever when he started, has been removed. Just like that, no warning, no soft landing, as if he hadn't led Red Bull to 6 Constructors' Championships and 8 Drivers' titles, turning a rookie outfit into one of the most dominant teams in F1 history. But this story isn't just about trophies and numbers. It's a power war, a war that's been rotting Red Bull from the inside for more than 4 years, and it just reached its boiling point. Helmut Marko, the 80-year-old advisor, has emerged stronger than ever, and with him, the Verstappen clan, led by Jos and backed by Max. Horner's departure isn't just restructuring, it's a sign the opposing faction has won. But at what cost? Lauren Mekies will temporarily take over the team, but he's walking into a broken machine, because even without Horner, Max Verstappen's future isn't guaranteed. And if Max leaves, if Red Bull loses its superstar, there's nothing left. Some fans are celebrating Horner's fall like karmic justice. He fired Checo, now it's his turn, say the tweets and comments. But maybe, just maybe, Horner wasn't the real villain. What if he was just a pawn trying to resist a far darker power? What if Helmut Marko has been pulling strings from the shadows all along, weakening rivals, amassing control? Who holds Marko accountable? Who dares look the Verstappen clan in the eye and ask, what exactly did you win today? Horner's fall could be the end of a long civil war, but the real earthquake is just beginning. And what's at stake isn't just Red Bull's leadership, it's the future of the entire team. Stay until the end, because we're going to break down the deep reasons behind Horner's removal, and what could happen next, to Horner, to Red Bull, and to the sport itself. Christian Horner didn't stumble into Red Bull. He arrived as a failed driver, then team owner in lower categories under the Arrows brand, where he developed talents that would one day race in Formula One, until in 2005, Dietrich Mateschitz, co-founder of Red Bull, handed him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity: take over the recently acquired Jaguar F1 team. At just 31 years old, Horner became the youngest team principal in F1 history. Within 8 weeks, he went from managing an F3000 team to leading a Formula One operation. That debut year, Red Bull scored 34 points, up from Jaguar's 9 the year before. Then came the masterstroke. He recruited Adrian Newey, the genius designer, at the end of that first year. And from there, Horner began to build a true F1 dream team. In 2009, the breakthrough came. Red Bull won their first race in China with Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. From 2010 to 2013, they dominated. 4 straight titles for both drivers and constructors. Red Bull went from an outsider to a living legend. After a quiet decade, Horner reinvented the team once more, this time with Max Verstappen. They rose again. Drivers' Championships in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. Constructors' titles in 2022 and 2023. Under Horner, Red Bull racked up 405 races, 124 wins, 107 poles, and 287 podiums. In short, 20 years of building an empire from scratch, and creating not one but 2 historic dynasties in Formula One. But now that story is over, and we have to ask, what happens when the architect of greatness is no longer welcome in the house he built? Despite the 8 world titles, the victories, and making Red Bull a superpower, Horner was no longer welcome. The Verstappen clan, led by Jos and backed by Marko, laid down one condition: if Max is to stay, Horner must go. An unthinkable demand just 2 years ago, but now a reality. Why? What power did Horner hold that bothered them so much? The truth is, Horner was never Red Bull's absolute monarch. He always shared power with Helmut Marko, an even older, just as powerful force. Marko wasn't just an advisor, he was the silent architect of Red Bull's racing empire. He convinced Mateschitz not just to sponsor F1, but to buy Jaguar in 2004 and Minardi in 2005. That birthed both a parent team and a feeder squad. He founded the Red Bull Junior team, a talent machine that produced Vettel, Ricciardo, Gasly, Sainz, and Verstappen. Red Bull always had two heads. Horner ran the race team, technical, sporting, strategic. Marko ruled over the drivers, the academy, the talent rotation between AlphaTauri, now RB, and the main team. For years, it worked. Champions were made, dynasties built. But when both men wanted more power and their visions clashed, the civil war began. Today, Horner's fall isn't just a sporting decision, it's checkmate in a power struggle that's been simmering for over 4 years. But why say this war has been raging for over 4 years? Why trace it back to the 2020 to 2021 transition? Because that's when the Red Bull model began to crack from the inside. For more than a decade, Helmut Marko had exercised near-divine control over the team's driver pool, shuffling talent from Toro Rosso, then AlphaTauri, and now Racing Bulls, to Red Bull as if playing chess. He molded careers and crushed them without remorse. He did it to Sébastien Buemi, to Jean-Éric Vergne, and most infamously to Daniel Kvyat in 2016, sacrificing him mid-season to make way for Max Verstappen. No one questioned him because the move worked. Max won his debut race in Spain. He became the crown jewel, and Marko's power was validated. But in 2020, something happened that had never occurred before at Red Bull. The well ran dry. Pierre Gasly and Alexander Albon, both Red Bull Academy graduates, were promoted too soon. Marko burned them just as quickly. He exposed them, demoted them, and ultimately, there was no one left in the academy capable of partnering Max in his championship bid. That's when Horner stepped in, and he did so in a way that shattered the Red Bull system. He signed an outsider, Sergio Checo Perez, a seasoned talent with no academy ties, no loyalty to Marko. A man who, though hired as a support act, represented the failure of Marko's entire ecosystem. Perez was living proof that the Red Bull junior team no longer worked, that the feeder team wasn't feeding, and that Marko, for the first time, had lost control of his chessboard. From day one, Checo was the wedge. Marko tolerated him, but never supported him. He couldn't attack him directly, because Checo helped Max win the 2021 title, but he belittled him every chance he got, even stooping as low as to question his nationality. Maybe Checo loses focus because he's South American, he said in 2023, ignoring the fact that Mexico is part of North America. It wasn't just wrong, it was symbolic. The mask had come off. It revealed not just disdain, but a deep-seated resentment toward the figure who exposed his system's weakness. That 2021 season marked the point of no return. The championship win lit a fire under Horner. He wanted to climb higher within Red Bull, but it also sparked a deeper resentment in Marko. What began as a clash of visions became an open war for the soul of Red Bull. The 2021 championship was a turning point for Max Verstappen, for Red Bull, and for Christian Horner. That title didn't just break Mercedes' streak or bring Red Bull back to the top. It ignited a new ambition in Horner to transcend Formula One. Horner, who had led the team's rebirth, now wanted more. He aimed to lead not just Red Bull Racing, but the entire global sports division of the Red Bull empire. Extreme sports, motocross, skateboarding, cliff diving. He wanted to be Dietrich Mateschitz's heir, the global CEO of the brand with wings. Meanwhile, a silent shift was happening in the paddock. Jos Verstappen was gaining influence. His son's title had granted him not just prestige, but power. Jos, long known as a controversial and controlling figure, found in Helmut Marko a natural ally. Both shared an unyielding top-down vision, and Horner, with his corporate ambitions, was now an obstacle to their dual power base. The 2022 season began with more blatant attacks on Sergio Perez. Marko no longer held back. Public statements, internal criticism, constant insinuations about Checo's performance, mindset, even his origins, and the worst part, no one inside Red Bull stopped him. Structurally, Marko and Horner were equals. Even if Horner wanted to stop it, he couldn't. Fans had already noticed. The internal Cold War was visible from the outside, but the real earthquake came in October 2022, with a single name, Dietrich Mateschitz. The founder, the patriarch, the only man who could balance the scales between the two power centers, was gone, and with him, Horner lost his shield. That power vacuum was exploited by Marko with surgical precision. With backing from the now unified Verstappen clan, he blocked Horner's rise to lead Red Bull globally. And in the key position, he installed a trusted man, Oliver Mintzlaff, former CEO of RB Leipzig. He was placed directly in the role Horner coveted. The move was endorsed by Mark Mateschitz, the founder's son and heir to the empire. From that moment, the war was no longer silent. Red Bull had a new corporate head, an empowered clan, and a completely isolated Christian Horner. In fact, 2022 saw the first major rupture between the two drivers. Max denied Checo the opportunity to earn crucial points toward the runner-up spot in the championship. At that moment, Horner seemed like the only one defending Checo. The 2023 season started differently. Checo was less willing to play second fiddle to Max and Marco, but he was quickly neutralized again. Car upgrades favored Max's style, as they had in past years. Still, 2023 was Red Bull's most prolific season, breaking team and category records. Everything seemed perfect until the season's end, when red flags began flashing inside the clan. Christian Horner and technical director Pierre Wache made revealing statements. Washer admitted, "A fast car is one that allows the driver to perform at their best. In that sense, we failed, because only one driver, Max, adapted well. We may not have understood what Checo needed to get the most out of the RB19, and Horner confirmed it bluntly. We didn't listen to Checo, acknowledging publicly that the car wasn't built solely around Max, that there was room for others, was seen by the clan as a direct betrayal of Marco's power logic. But Horner was simply exercising the only authority he had left, technical decisions, and he did it for the team, not just for Max. Let's remember, driver decisions were Marco's, technical decisions were Horner's. And so, in 2024, the Horner case exploded. The Horner case wasn't just an investigation, it was the final trigger in Red Bull's collapse. It all began when an employee, later identified as his personal assistant, accused Christian Horner of inappropriate behavior. Horner immediately denied all allegations, and Red Bull GmbH launched an internal investigation. For months, Horner continued to appear in the paddocks, but the change was clear. Helmut Marko, once a constant presence by his side, was now nowhere to be seen. Only Adrian Newey remained close, a sign that their alliance stood firm, though visibly isolated from the rest of the team. While the world speculated about Horner's future, the machinery of power was already in motion behind the scenes at Red Bull. Rumours swirled that Jonathan Wheatley, then sporting director, had been selected to replace Horner. In fact, it was reported that both Mark Mateschitz, heir to the Red Bull empire, and Oliver Mintzlaff had already drafted a resignation letter, just waiting for the right moment. But Horner responded with a masterstroke. He began appearing publicly alongside Callum Yovidia, patriarch of the Thai family that owns 51% of Red Bull. The message was clear: I'm not alone. While Mintzlaff represented the European side of the conglomerate, Horner found shelter under the wing of the other majority shareholder. It was a powerful move, and it halted the dismissal. When it was finally announced that Horner had been cleared of all charges, that same day, compromising documents, screenshots, messages, and photos were leaked to journalists, media outlets, teams, and executives. It was a coordinated attack, one last attempt to bring him down. But it didn't work. Public opinion was already divided. The case faded quietly. And without legal consequences or internal sanctions, Horner remained in his post. But the damage was done. What followed was a deep institutional crisis. The atmosphere was toxic, and the first to jump ship were Max Verstappen's closest allies. Lee Stevenson, his chief mechanic, left for Sauber after 18 years with the team. And he wasn't the only one. A technical exodus began. Staff across departments began leaving, lured by rival teams eager to exploit Red Bull's internal instability. But the biggest blow came with the departure of Adrian Newey, the architect of their championship-winning cars, the aerodynamic genius behind Red Bull's dynasty. He left without hesitation. He left because of the environment, and he signed with Aston Martin. Then, Jonathan Wheatley, the man once expected to replace Horner, also left for Sauber as team principal. The rebellion was complete. Red Bull, once the unbeatable juggernaut, was crumbling from within. And all of this was unfolding while Max Verstappen, the crown jewel, watched in silence. Because if the ship was going down, would he stay on board? During the 2024 season, Red Bull entered a phase they never saw coming. And not because the results were disastrous, they were still winning races, but because for the first time in years, they didn't understand their own car. The RB20 was fast on the straights, sure, but twitchy in corners, tricky to set up, inconsistent from session to session. Initially, the complaints came from Checo. Then Max Verstappen himself began to raise concerns. And when Max complains, something serious is going on. The upgrades didn't work, the car didn't respond, and to make matters worse, Adrian Newey was gone, while other teams kept bringing upgrades that did work. And then the pressure came, veiled as a threat. Jos Verstappen broke his silence. Max won't stay here if he doesn't have a competitive car, he told The Telegraph, sending a clear message not only to Horner, but to Red Bull's entire leadership. The Cold War was no longer cold. Horner responded by expressing faith in Max's loyalty, but his eyes betrayed exhaustion, not conviction. Jos had lit the fuse once more. The same Jos who never succeeded as a driver, but shaped his son with obsession, punishments, and emotional neglect. A man with a history of domestic violence against Sophie Kumpen, Max's mother, an attempted vehicular assault on an ex-partner who dropped the charges out of fear, and multiple family altercations, including physically assaulting his own father, Max's grandfather. That Jos, who lives through Max's talent, was now pushing for full control of the team. And for many, the real detonator of this battle was something else entirely: contract clauses. It was revealed that both Helmut Marko and Max Verstappen had interlinked conditions in their contracts. If one left, the other would be automatically released from their Red Bull obligations. That explained everything. The real power wasn't with Horner, it was with them. And the most terrifying part, Horner didn't even know those clauses existed. For the first time in 2 decades, the man running the team didn't know who actually held the reins. Eventually, it happened. Sergio Perez left Red Bull. And while the split was framed as a natural parting of ways, breaking a contract that ran through 2026 required a significant payout from Red Bull. Everyone knew certain people celebrated behind closed doors. The Verstappen clan, now fully unified with Jos, Helmut Marko, and Dutch media that had become more tabloid than journalistic, felt victorious. Checo's head was the offering they had demanded for years. Horner, entangled in legal and personal issues, couldn't defend Checo, who, amid declining performances, had become increasingly hard to defend. The Latino driver, who once exposed the weaknesses of the Red Bull Junior team and of Marko himself, was now gone, and what followed was exactly what Horner had feared from the start. Red Bull was entering its most critical phase as a constructor, developing its own power unit through Red Bull powertrains in partnership with Ford. It was the most delicate moment in terms of engineering, strategy, and long-term vision, especially with the new 2026 regulations approaching. That's why they couldn't heavily invest in their current car, which was already a mess. The RB20 had exposed weaknesses, but the RB21 was worse. No progress, no evolution. The upgrades didn't work, and most of all, there was no direction. Adrian Newey's voice was gone. Horner's authority was no longer absolute. Triumphant after Horner's fall, Marko finally imposed one of his protégés, Liam Lawson. The same driver he once used to pressure Checo now had a guaranteed seat on the main team. But the result was a disaster. After just 2 disappointing races, Marko went back to his old tricks, the musical chairs game. Lawson was demoted, and in his place came Yuki Tsunoda, who after 4 years in the junior team finally got his chance, only to fail as well. The situation was pathetic. The most dominant team of the modern era had become a circus of improvised decisions, senseless rotations, unprepared drivers, and an unmanageable car. But more importantly, it gave the clan ammunition for the next move, to push Mark Matuszkiewicz and Oliver Mintzlaff again. Because with Checo gone, with performance plummeting, and no results to justify Horner's continued presence, it was only a matter of time before Red Bull exploded from within once more. But there was still one final blow left, the most feared, the dirtiest, the one the Verstappen clan had perfected over the years, bringing back the threat of Max leaving the team. Jos Verstappen, with his usual tone of arrogance and disdain, lit the fuse again in the international press. There's tension in the team. Horner is a danger to Red Bull. The team could destroy itself from within if he stays. Just like that. No filters, no nuance. Jos wasn't just pointing fingers, he was holding a bomb, and this time the threat seemed to echo louder. Toto Wolff had already shown serious interest in Max ever since Hamilton announced his move to Ferrari. And not only that, George Russell's contract renewal, which was supposed to be finalised before the summer break, was suddenly on hold. Nobody in the paddock says it out loud, but everyone knows it. Mercedes is waiting for Red Bull to collapse from within, and if that happens, Verstappen could trigger another key clause in his contract. If Max isn't in the top 3 of the drivers' standings by mid-season, he has the legal right to walk away from Red Bull, despite his deal running through 2028. That clause has now become the perfect weapon for the clan to close in for the kill. Meanwhile, Christian Horner kept showing up at Grand Prix weekends, but he was no longer walking around as the emperor of an empire. Now he looked more like a ghost, a man standing alone. Gone were the days when he strolled the paddock alongside Adrian Newey or Pierre Wache. His last remaining card was to be seen beside Chalem Yovidia, the head of Red Bull's Thai ownership side, who for months had been his only shield. But with the team's performance crumbling and the internal tension peaking, even Yovidia no longer seemed interested in playing the game. The Thai magnate, used to backing winners, now supported Horner reluctantly. Christian Horner was cornered. The Verstappen clan had isolated him, weakened him, and now pushed him to the edge, with the threat of taking everything from him. Because if Max left, Red Bull wouldn't just lose a driver, they'd lose their most valuable commercial asset, the face of the modern era, the man on whom title, multi-million-dollar contracts, and global deals had been built. And at that moment, for the first time ever, Christian Horner seemed to have no answer. And the day came, on July 9th, 2025, at 11:21 a.m. UK time. The statement was as brief as it was brutal. Christian Horner has been dismissed from his duties with immediate effect. No tribute, no press conference, not a single word from the man who built the empire. Christian Horner eventually addressed the team at the Milton Keynes headquarters. Insert Horner press conference.
Yesterday, I was informed by Red Bull that operationally I will no longer be involved with the business or the team moving forward from after this gathering. I will still remain employed by the company, but operationally the baton will be handed over. And that obviously is came as a shock, obviously to myself, but and just express my gratitude to each and every single member of the team that has given so much during the last 20 and a half years that I've been here. Watching and being part of this team has been the biggest privilege in my life. Seeing the team
He will be replaced by Laurent Mekies, who leaves the VC-ARB project to step into the hottest seat in Formula One. In his place, Alan Perman, the veteran former Alpine man, who had recently joined as a structural reinforcement, will take over the B team. But what kind of team is Mekies inheriting? Because this is no longer Red Bull. It's a worn-out, broken, and deeply disfigured version of what was once the most feared monster on the grid. There's no cohesion, no direction. Leadership is now hijacked by the decisions of the clan, who, with Horner gone and no one left to oppose them, are free to operate unchecked. And you only need to look at how Marco has handled the second driver situation to see what's coming. Lawson was promoted and flopped. Tsunoda was promoted and flopped again, but nothing happened. No one crucified them. No one lit the fire. If Checo Perez had delivered those same performances, we'd already be talking about a record time replacement, public mockery, a media storm thirsty for blood. Now, with Horner out, the message is clear. Red Bull no longer responds to results. It responds to whims. And that is the worst news of all. The Verstappen clan has won. No more shadows, no more silences. They've taken full control of Red Bull Racing. With Horner off the board, the new order has been fully installed. Laurent Mekies has been promoted as team principal, but in truth, he's nothing more than an extension of Helmut Marko's will. It's no coincidence that ever since arriving at Racing Bulls, Mekies was already executing instructions that came from the top, or rather, from the darkest corners of the old Milton Keynes building. And Alan Permain, the other promoted figure, isn't a neutral party either. His first public statements after the announcement left no room for doubt. I'm very grateful to Oliver Mintzlaff and Dr. Marco for trusting me. The message was clear. There are no new leaders, only new faces serving the same power. Red Bull is now a fiefdom completely ruled by Marco Mintzlaff, and most likely Jos Verstappen from behind the curtain. They did it, total control, no opposition, and yet Red Bull still stands vulnerable, because they still haven't secured Max Verstappen's future. Talks with Mercedes remain open, Toto Wolff continues to extend a hand, and Brackley still hasn't renewed Russell, waiting for the inevitable. The clan has won, but Red Bull could still lose its king. Christian Horner has fallen, but he's not finished. The man who built the most dominant empire of the modern era, who turned Red Bull from a garage joke into a champion-making machine, now faces a new chapter, choosing his comeback. Because even though, during his final words to his staff, Horner said he remains part of the company, this doesn't mean he'll stay in another Red Bull role. As a former team principal with access to highly sensitive information, he'll need to go through a gardening leave period before joining another team, just like Mattia Binotto did. That's why his exit may have been timed precisely to allow him to serve out that period and be free to start working with a new team by the start of the 2026 season. So now the big question is, where will he go? It would be strange to see Horner jump into a struggling team like Williams or Haas, both in the middle of reshuffling their leadership. Some mention Audi, which doesn't sound like a bad idea, but they're emerging from the Sauber structure and already have key roles promised. Another option is Aston Martin, which could reunite Horner with Newey, but in truth, there are very few serious options. One possible destination is Alpine. The team is in a constant state of rebuilding and is clearly in need of a strong leader with charisma and vision. Horner could fit. He's known to have a good relationship with Flavio Briatore, now the super advisor of the French project. But there's a catch. Briatore doesn't like sharing power. He wants someone who follows orders, and Horner was never that type of leader. A juicier possibility. Ferrari, the most legendary team in Formula One, isn't fully satisfied with Frederic Vasseur. Before Horner's dismissal, rumours in Italy were already floating about his possible replacement by Antonello Coletta. But now that Horner is available, things could change. John Elkann, Ferrari's president, has wanted the Brit at Maranello for years. His media presence, political savvy, and 20-plus years at the top of F1 fit perfectly with what Ferrari needs to recover. That winning DNA they still haven't found, but there's a third option, one that might be the most poetic of all. Cadillac, the new American giant set to debut in 2026. A team that still doesn't fully exist, a team that needs to be built from the ground up. And who better than Horner, the same man who 20 years ago took a handful of engineers, the remains of Jaguar, and turned it into a monster. If anyone knows how to transform an embryonic project into a powerhouse team, it's him. The board is reset. And far from disappearing, Christian Horner might be about to write the second greatest chapter of his career. The combinations are all on the table. And if this were chess, we'd only be halfway through the game. But too many valuable pieces have already been sacrificed. The talent drain at Red Bull began in March 2024 with Lee Stevenson. And in just over a year, the Verstappen clan has pushed out an entire generation. Adrian Newey, Jonathan Wheatley, Will Courtney, Rob Marshall, Bradley Scanes, and now the team principal himself. His trusted allies, like marketing director Oliver Hughes and communications director Paul Smith, have also been let go. Next in line, likely Pierre Waché. But don't count Horner out just yet. He's proven he can rise again, from nothing. However, if Ferrari finally opens its doors to him, we may witness the most intense battle of modern F1. A Mercedes led by Toto Wolff and Max Verstappen versus a Ferrari led by Christian Horner with Lewis Hamilton behind the wheel. A war of past versus present, legacy versus legacy. And if not Ferrari, then the battlefield might move elsewhere. Cadillac, with its official entry in 2026, could make a masterstroke, sign Horner, and bring back Checo Perez. The duo that started the war, now reunited to end it. Meanwhile, Verstappen would be leading the new Mercedes era. You couldn't write a better storyline, and we're only halfway through 2025. A year that was supposed to be transitional is turning into a full-blown drama of betrayals, revenge, and shocking twists. Because if this is just the prologue, 2026 will be an epic. Many fans are cheering at Horner's dismissal, blaming him for Checo's downfall. After all, some see Horner's past statements as pushing Perez out. But what if it was a warning? His sudden exit happened just in time to meet his gardening period. So maybe Horner knew more than he could say. From where we're sitting, Horner doesn't seem like the villain after all. But what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments and see you next time. Have a great race.